Here's where we start on all angles this hour. There are calls for the Unemployment Insurance Fund to be placed under administration. Business and Labour want the UIF's investment to be probed independently. The fund is administered by the Department of Labour and Unemployment, while Business and Labour play an advisory role. Let's find out why they're making this call. Matthew Parks, Cosatu's Parliamentary Coordinator, joins us now via Zoom. Mr. Parks, thank you very much for your time. We have seen that there seems to be issues in terms of people's application for the UIF funds not making it to people's accounts. Is this why you're calling for it to go under administration?
Good afternoon. Thanks for having us. Look, it's basically for two main reasons. And we've been engaging on this issue with the UIF, with the Department of Employment and Labour, with Presidency for the past 4 years, especially since COVID-19, when we could really see the UIF was under severe strain. And many of the systems, to be honest with you, were simply antiquated. So if you go to any UIF office across the country, without exception, you will see queues and queues and queues. You will hear countless stories from workers across the country who struggle to submit applications. When they submit them, often things go wrong. Workers have to go to the offices physically to submit their claims, and there they have to wait hours and hours upon time. And times they're told to come back again because the systems are offline, the staff are simply overstretched, documentation is lost, things fall through the cracks. The net result is that workers are just struggling simply to receive the monies. And we have engaged, we've worked very close with the UF colleagues, we appreciate the real efforts they try to make, but the fact is, 4 years of engagement down the road, we still have workers in queues. So what we see from the UF is commitments which are positive, PowerPoint presentations which give one hope, but the net result, if you go to any UIF office today, you'll find queues and queues and queues, and workers are frustrated. We've tried to assist many times, but we just don't see the progress in that regard. So that's the one frustration. Then we've got the frustration of the issues of corruption. We have seen many times, the Auditor General has found many times the systems are extremely porous. GTAC and other institutional government also found the systems are really antiquated. And this is what enables corruption to take place. Often, not all the time, but often. So we were quite alarmed to receive reports over New Year's about a 5 billion rand gift given to one company, which is chaired by the chairperson of a public entity which falls under the Department of Labour. And yet there was no business case made to justify this. We have welcomed the Minister of Labour intervening to hold that intervention and even to remove that person as a chairperson of productivity. But it just paints to us a real problem. One is that workers struggle to get the money. The second is that money which is due to workers, which are not receiving, is then used as a slush fund by some delinquent businessmen and so forth. So I think for us, it's about addressing it because we just simply can't continue as is.
We had a conversation with the CEO, Mr. Marupeng, here in studio just about a week or two ago, and he was saying that everything is fine. He says that the picture that is being painted is exaggerated.
Well, it depends on what bar we set. If we set a bar that allows people to queue for hours in a day because they have nothing else to do in life and they don't deserve to be treated with compassion, given the financial distress they're experiencing, having lost their jobs or going maternity leave, then sure, then there's no problem. But I think from where we stand as Cosatu, we're not keen to see people in the 21st century having to queue literally for days at a time, having to go to the UIF offices, be it in Cape Town, be it in Soweto, wherever you are in the country, literally going to queue from 5 in the morning and so forth. It's not good for them, it demoralizes them. Many of them choose to give up. We've had stories where workers who have got maternity leave have only received the maternity leave payments when the child is walking already. And this is money which is really meant to affect workers who have lost salary. It's not meant to be, it's not a gift, it's not a favor the government is doing to workers. This is workers' money, they pay for it out of deductions from their salary and also from the employer's contribution. The state is just meant to manage it. And if it can't manage it properly, then it needs to ask for help. It needs to ask for help from the private sector, it needs to ask for help from SARS or from Treasury, whomever it needs to ask for help from, but it must do something. But we can't accept a situation where workers are queuing as if this is the election day in 1994. It can't be right in this 21st century.
Well, we do know that there's also that investigation, that 225-page forensic report that was given to Thulas Nxesi, the Labour Minister, coming to that company. I think it's called Tunja Capital or Tuja Capital, that 5 billion rand contract with a company that only existed on paper. Is that also another one of your concerns? Nxesi has asked that the top management at the UIF should actually write back to him and let him know why they shouldn't be suspended.
It's a huge matter of concern for us. There's 5 billion rand in any stretch of mind. It's not peanuts. You're talking about UIF assets of about 130 billion rand, so still significant amounts of money. It's workers' money, so it's no one else's money. It's not the slush fund for bored politicians or for failed businessmen. It is money that is meant to help workers who have lost wages, have been retrenched or dismissed, who are on maternity leave, or whatever the situation is. It's more galling that workers are struggling to get their monies, and yet here's a aspirant, alleged businessman asking for 5 billion rand for him and his son for a company which doesn't exist. It's just beyond shameful. And the Minister of Labour is correct to remove that person. It can't be correct that a person who shares a public entity asks the state to give him 5 billion rand to do business with the same public entity he's leading. But I think for us, besides that, we think it's the tip of an iceberg. We think there's many more instances of corruption precisely because of the weak systems in the UIF. And hence we think there's a need for the president to intervene, to put it under administration, bring on board competent external management. Let's get SARS and the SIU to be tasked to do a forensic audit of all of the UIF investments, check where's corruption, and for those who are found wanting to deal with them, there should be lifestyle audits of all officials too, because it's very alarming that the UIF Investment Committee and the PIC, which invests on behalf of the UIF, both of the investment committees said this business application makes no sense. They shouldn't go ahead with it. Yet the leadership of the Department of Labour and the UIF decided to overturn that recommendation by their relevant officials and to proceed with it. So that raises significant alarm bells. And, look, we're not raising this thing in an isolated context. We're coming from a decade of state capture and corruption, which has cost the state hundreds of billions of rands, cost workers and the economy a huge amount of pain. So we have to be extra vigilant. I think for all the red flags are there. We hope government will move with speed. And again, we were assured in 2020 that everything is okay at the UIF. There's nothing to stress about. 8 months later, in 2020, the AG, the Auditor General, raised the very same concerns we had raised about the systems not being modernized, not being strong enough, not speaking to other government institutions, etc., or systems. So I guess for us, it's just really, we need to act with extreme vigilance when it comes to workers' money. Government, the president needs to intervene.
Especially because the COVID tears, there's still some who still haven't gotten paid from the time they were either unemployed during lockdown or fell pregnant, etc. There's still payments that need to be dispersed for those people. But talk to me about putting the UIF under administration. We've seen, for instance, I know it's two things that are not exactly the same, but it is government at the end of the day. We've seen in municipalities where there would be an administrator that is appointed and it doesn't work.
Yeah. Look, we have a choice. We tried through endless engagement. We want the UIF to succeed. And, during COVID, with all of its dramas, all of its issues, it was the biggest source of relief to the economy, to workers. But it didn't need to come with this level of delays and frustration that many workers, many businesses experienced. We don't think it should be a complicated thing. We're in the 21st century. We have a very well-developed financial sector which could easily give advice, provide system to the UIF. We have the South African Revenue Service, a state institutions which handles far more complicated calculations, manages to do them within 48 hours. Yet we have the UIF, which struggles to pay payments which are much simpler over months at a time. So I think for us, it's about we have to intervene. We've had endless discussions that have not yielded the results we want to see. It shouldn't be a complicated issue, but we really want to see this being addressed and dealt with before the end of this administration. We think if we can bring on board external persons, one is that they can identify the weaknesses, bring on board a new system with whomever the expertise they need to bring in from the public or private sector, rebuild the systems. And essentially, you could just simply model it along the South African Revenue Service systems as well. But equally, we need to have a forensic audit. So the SIU needs to be tasked and structured by the president to do that. Again, bring SARS to do lifestyle audits and really just shake out what needs to be shaken out from the UIF. But to be honest, we've had stories time and time again. And we appreciate the majority of officials of the UIF are doing it the level best. They're decent, hardworking people committed to serving the public, but the system is not working. And it's not just us raising it because we're grumpy today, but we have been having this discussion for 4 years. Our colleagues in business too have been frustrated by it. Even to be honest with you, colleagues in government have been frustrated by the level of inefficiencies in the UIF. And again, we're not saying this because we're trying to be difficult. We want the UIF colleagues to do well. But the fact is, you go to the UIF office, any office today, right now, you will see a queue there as if it's election day. And that can't be justifiable.
All right, Matthew Parks, thank you for speaking to us. Hopefully, the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee that looks over this particular department will seek better answers from the UIF and the Minister of Labour soon.